Thank you all for joining us on this very beautiful day in Toronto. We're very excited to discuss with you all the onboarding journey. We'll be looking at what causes users to drop off, why onboarding itself is so important for you as a business, what best practices looks like, and how Flinks can kind of help you in your onboarding journey. So today we're going to keep it fairly conversational, and hopefully we can share a lot of insights with you all. Before we do this, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Arbor Ago, Enterprise Relationship Manager here at Flinks. I've been here for just about 4 years now, which looking at that headshot is enough time to grow a beard. And it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Klaus Lima. He's the Director of Client Success here at Flinks. So we'll be having a great conversation with you all today. So for those of you who are seeing Flinks for the very first time, a very brief introduction on Flinks. Fintech platform built here in Canada, been around since 2016. We help a variety of businesses automate and make seamless onboarding experiences for their customers across a variety of different use cases, predominantly in the financial space. We provide connectivity to 15,000 plus banks and credit unions in Canada and USA, and we're doing over 1 million secure monthly connections a month. Klaus, I know before Flinks you have an engineering background, but at Flinks you started as a technical account manager, worked your way up through a variety of different positions, and now you own the entire customer success journey. In your 5+ years at Flinks, is it safe to say that you've helped integrate Flinks into 300 plus onboarding experiences? And if it is fair to say that, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the onboarding journey, its importance, and areas of improvement?
First of all, hello everyone. Um, so yeah, I've been around for a minute, as Arbor was saying. It's interesting because the conversations with a wide variety of different industries and different company sizes. Um, One thing that we've noticed is that whenever a client is struggling with their service or their product, they're usually only looking at the outcome. So they're looking at a loan that doesn't get approved, or an account that doesn't link, or a payment that doesn't go through. And often the process is neglected. So what I mean by process is what leads the user up to that outcome, right? And that's, in other words, the onboarding flow. So when the onboarding flow is not really taken care of, the consequences are the ultimately the outcome not being the one you were expecting. Things that are usually driving the drop off, from our perspective, from what we've seen so far, it's essentially two different dimensions. So there's the user experience side, or as I say, the human side, the subjective side. In other words, what emotions are you impressing in your user? So is it trust? Is it skepticism? And as well, and well, also as importantly, the technology that is there to support and to make all that experience like more seamless, so to speak.
This is before we're even looking at possible tech partners like Flinks. It could be the very first part of the onboarding journey for a user, whether they're opening a bank account or applying for a loan, the very first point of interaction with a business, correct?
Yeah, it's what we always say. Like the first impression is really what matters, and the onboarding flow is nothing but a first impression, right? So if the first impression is not great, chances are you're not going to get the results you're looking for. So here we're presenting examples of what that could look like, and things that actually happen in real life with us for clients reaching out and asking for our insight is, in the lending space, for example, a decline on loans being approved. So that's essentially just cost of opportunity or lost revenue. On the fintech world, it could be various use cases, but for example, an account not being linked, an account not being funded because an external account is not being linked. The most common mistakes, if you wouldn't mind moving forward, is it's pretty intuitive. So the manual steps, no one really wants to do, take several steps to apply for a loan or for, using a financial product. Manual steps is almost like the feeling when you're pushing work on your user in order to use your own product. No one really loves that. No flexibility means not having an alternative. So there's only one path forward. So you have to link your account. You have to provide a document, there's no other alternative, and which essentially drives the users away. The data trust, so which is basically an unclear process. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I exposing my data this way? And then ultimately the connectivity gaps, which is making sure that you have the technology and you're using the right vendor for that right region. So um, making sure that your provider actually has good connectivity in the landscape you're connecting on.
Thank you, Klaus. So very clear then the importance of getting onboarding right, serving your customers as quickly and as easily as possible, so that all the efforts you've done to get a customer in front of you from a acquisition perspective, you can get the most value from by converting that customer, and certainly not risking losing them to a competitor who's just taken a little bit more time with their onboarding flow. We're going to do a how does your onboarding score exercise. So it's very simple. We're going to show you what a good onboarding looks like and what a bad onboarding looks like from our experience helping customers integrate Flinks. And these are real world situations we've seen and use cases we've seen. So give yourself a point if you choose the good side, and don't give yourself a point if you choose the bad side. And we're going to take everything that Klaus said and try and present it to you in an easy to understand way. Fewer steps and less friction. So if your flow for your company or one that you remember looks like the one on the left, give yourself a thumbs up. That's one which, in my opinion, eases the anxiety of your user who's going through your onboarding journey. They have a very clear call to action. It's just tell us about yourself, something that just feels very communicative. They know how many steps are involved and where they're actually at in the progress. So they're not thinking, oh, how long am I going to be part of this onboarding journey? You've even given them kind of an ETA. This takes about 2 minutes, right? So they feel very comfortable. It's very digestion sized amount of data that you're asking them for. It's fairly straightforward. Whereas the one on the right, you can see in this case, there's even a scroll bar of data that they'll have to put in. They're already seeing that they're going to have to calculate things like their monthly income. They're going to have to go and dig up their account number and institution number. It's a little bit harsh there, right? So we would say the best practice is the one on the left. So that's the human experience. One step further is making sure you get the most value out of your technology partner. Some of the data that onboarding flows ask for is already there in the KYC or in the bank account connectivity or in the data enrichment that you can derive from the raw transactions. Do a favor for your customers and already populate that for them, and then just ask them to confirm and review it. This also provides a couple of other benefits, primarily from a fraud perspective. If you've calculated that their monthly income and their expenses are a certain amount and you've pre-populated that, and then that individual goes in and changes it to something drastically different, that might be a prompt on your side as a red flag or something that pushes them to a more manual review. Klaus said earlier that asking your customer to do a lot of work on an onboarding flow feels like, to me, self-checkout at a grocery store. I'm there to spend money at your grocery store, and you're also asking me to check out all the groceries. So if you can make that easier for your customer, that's always a better experience. Klaus, I'll pass it here to go back to the trust and transparency.
Yeah, this is something that I briefly mentioned in the beginning, right? So, which touches a lot on the user component that we mentioned. So, making sure that you're leveraging your brand to its fullest. So, if your brand is visible, if the whole experience is, it's cohesive, it makes sense, it's intuitive, it feels natural, it feels part of your product. Chances are the user is going to trust it and basically just engage with it. So some of the best practices we've seen is not only the brand being present there, but also full disclosure as to what's taking place at that point in time, why the user is being asked to share their data, what the data is going to be used for. So all of that transparency also drives a bigger adoption.
And I'd say super important as well in an era where we're seeing different kinds of frauds come up, AI is being involved in fraud. Just to have that extra layer of transparency with your customer goes a long way, especially in a Canadian environment where folks are still increasingly getting used to connecting their bank accounts. We'll talk about this later, but the open banking regime isn't as mature here. So giving customers that exposure to why they're sharing data and what they're sharing will help them get across that finish line.
Yeah, the other one is flexibility, right? So we've often seen onboarding journeys that were struggling where there were no alternative. So you either connect your bank account or you're out, or even worse, you only have the manual path. So having alternatives is important. So being flexible in that regard is interesting. So you can do that by enabling, for example, oh, okay, you don't feel comfortable sharing your bank account, well, actually connecting your bank account. You can upload your documents instead and get to the same outcome. So it's just more flexibility yields more results there, which also links to the fact of having flexibility also allows you to re-engage with clients as well. Making sure that you are keeping track of what the steps are and where the clients are dropping off also allows you to re-engage with them if needed. So we've seen so many different and so many creative solutions that one of our best converting customers have put in place where if a drop off happens, because it will happen inevitably, but even if you have the perfect onboarding flow, things happen. Maybe they had to stop it because they joined a meeting, or maybe their kid needs them. um, Giving them the ability to resume is interesting, and maybe prompting them to resume. So the re-engagement emails here is also something that we've seen being really effective in onboarding journeys in general.
Yeah, this one's massive. I've definitely talked to a lot of customers who have implemented the re-engagement flow and being able to resume an application. That's what happens when you build a really good onboarding journey and you have insights throughout the entire flow so that you can make it even easier for your customer to use your services. Klaus, I want to go back just very quickly to the one path isn't enough. Can you
Mhm.
describe the different options that someone has in terms of sequencing either a bank connection or a PDF or image upload?
Yeah, so we've seen different implementations. So we've seen customers that have like three or four different options. So either a manual route or link your bank, and if anything goes wrong, you have a fallback option of uploading a document, or you can just upfront just decide to upload a document and go with that. Um, so that's what I find that it's like you're making your user feel that they are on the driver's seat.
Now, back to the audience. We just went through 5 examples of best practices versus not best practices. I want you to all be honest with yourselves here and check out the score that you had. And I would suggest that if you had anything less than 4, send us a message after this call and we'll do an onboarding review. And if you had a 5, please send us a message after this call so we can review your onboarding so that we can learn as well. So I hope that exercise showed you folks a little bit of what best practices are like. And when we talk about things like trust, transparency, and using the technology to the most of your abilities, we give you some examples with that. So, having understood a little bit about the onboarding journey and why it's so important, even though many times it's self-evident why onboarding is important, how can a company like Flinks help you with creating a great onboarding journey? What I want to take here is a little bit of time to talk about the suite of products and services that Flinks has built out since 2016, where Flinks was purposefully built to be the first bank data aggregator and open banking provider before open banking was even in place in 2016. And that starts with Flinks Connect, kind of the first point of contact in an onboarding journey where you can help a customer tell you who they are in the easiest way possible by connecting their bank account, sharing with you their name, account and routing numbers, transactional data, bank account balances, home address, email address, wherever available, all that KYC data to help fill out an onboarding form. The second item that we built long after connectivity was document upload. This was in a response to understanding that sometimes the Canadian consumer doesn't want to connect their bank account. They should have an option that they're also familiar with. This is uploading either PDF bank statements or images, image format of bank statements. And then comes the kind of the brain to connectivity. That's Flinks enrichment, where we take raw transactional data and we help make insights out of it. Things like the source of income, whether it's a primary, secondary, or gig economy employer, how much that individual makes on a monthly or annual basis. So full income analysis, then expense analysis, the different kind of bills they pay, the different kinds of loans they have, and then even fraud analysis, the number of NSF fees, things that can help you just better understand your customer, whether you're lending to them or onboarding them as a long-term investment customer, whatever the use case is, the enrichment helps make sense of the raw transactions. Flinks Pay, in the context of onboarding, is something that can help you if there's a funding component to your journey. So if they're opening a bank account at your financial institution, they can do the entire onboarding journey powered by Flinks, from connecting an account to moving the funds as well. And then the Flinks Outbound is kind of it's our real push to making open banking happen in Canada before regulation is fully in place. So Flinks Outbound helps financial institutions or data providers expose their APIs to the data recipient ecosystem so that those individuals can have access to cleaner quality data more regularly. So in Canada, we're the only provider who has partnered with banks to help them take part in open banking use cases before open banking is even created yet. Very briefly on this slide here. So API first, fairly straightforward to integrate. That's something everyone kind of demands of their technology partners these days, and also making sure that their security and compliance is held to the highest standard. Being a subsidiary of National Bank of Canada, we're held to the same standard as all financial institutions are. So that's something that we really pride ourselves on. Built for Canada. Klaus, feel free to jump in at any time here, but we think this is something important, especially in an environment where open banking and bank account connectivity is still maturing. So everything that we've done at Flinks has been with the Canadian consumer in mind. What are their habits like? What are their risk appetites like? And then also with the government and regulatory environment in mind. When we advise our financial institution partners how they should consider things like accreditation or consent management, it's with the knowledge that we have from industry workshops or government workshops where we're advising and being advised on what the future state might look like. So that when the time comes, that transition to an open banking or consumer-driven banking regime happens, it can be as easy as possible for our customers. The added benefit to this is that it results in great relationships with all banks, even the ones who are just supporting screen scraping today. Maybe supporting is the wrong word, but who are just being screen scraped. So having contacts at those banks allows a provider like Flinks to have better quality connections to those banks as well.
So now, from the conversations we've had and all the discussions about onboarding and best practices and where the blind spots are, so we've basically put an effort of creating those insights to tell you what is going wrong, but what kind of information can you infer from your current onboarding experience. So for that reason, we've designed enhanced reporting for on a client level. So we're able to assist you on with the understanding of where the drop off has actually happened, and which is part of our normal discussions with clients, is why the drop off is happening based on our industry knowledge, but and which also yields other benefits as well. What this report basically entails is we're not only sharing metrics with you, we're basically looking at those metrics and understand what they actually mean and what kind of actions can be taken, or what kind of inferences we can get from this data. So this could be things like, oh, this drop off is happening at this step, and the reason for that drop off is X, Y, and Z. Our suggestion is to do this tweak.
Yeah.
So this could be, for example, in a consent page, for example, that is too heavy on wording, for example, or the lack of a consent page.
So Klaus,
Um,
just very briefly, if I'm a business who wants to do lending, for example, this would be what I can see about my customer base in general, see what
yeah,
provinces they're connecting from, what their user journeys are looking like from a drop-off perspective, and where my customers are connecting from in Canada or across the world, right? And also
exactly.
how specific institutions are actually performing from a connectivity perspective. So this would be what I would see as a customer.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the level of transparency that we see important, that we find important for the customer to understand exactly what kind of experience they're providing to their customer as well.
And then here, Klaus, I guess this kind of like puts the everything into a consolidated form, like where we take this and go from data to action. Once you're able to see your user journey, that's when you can really intelligently make a change into your flow.
Yeah, because then you have the data that you've not. So see the difference between, not only looking at the outcome, not looking at the process, and this is our way to help you look at that process and make you understand, like, and help you understand what to improve, what to tackle, what is impacting your experience. And then additional insights such as the geographic one that you just mentioned. So understanding maybe, for example, an influx of connections coming from a specific province, and that could yield for example, like a business insight. Maybe there's a campaign that I should run for that specific audience. Maybe your audience is different from what you anticipated. Maybe there are different demographics there to be considered. So all of these nuances um, are only captured by looking at the data underlying the whole experience.
So just kind of highlighting where we started and where we've gotten to. We've talked about onboarding being one of the important things that is overlooked at by customers who are of Flinks, but also just in this kind of fintech space in general. We've looked at best practices. We've looked at how Flinks is really suited to help onboarding journeys and even questions you should be asking any kind of provider that you look at, to be honest. And now we've looked at some of the data that we can help provide so that you can diagnose specific areas of your onboarding to improve. We want to highlight a couple use cases of our clients who have gotten it spot on. They would be, getting scores of 5 on our exercise there. So first is Bree, a previously manual review helped automate from start to finish with Flinks, and now their customers in under 10 minutes can get the funds that they're looking for, and taking advantage of the incredibly high bank connection success rates that we provide across USA. So it's just a great seamless user journey there from start to finish. It's a high trust journey as well, very easy for customers to get through. So I guess the thing in mind whenever I'm talking to customers is how can you make the customer's journey even easier? And then using as much of the tools as possible that you have available to do that and really just presently thinking about it. Then the other one, Wealth Simple, known to a lot of folks for having a fantastic user journey and ease of connecting accounts. So the last time I was on there, I think they do have an option for a manual review, but they really highlight the benefits of what the faster the Flinks version provides to their customers. So these are two examples which I implore everyone to kind of look at. We have a couple case studies online, but to learn a little bit more from. Overall, the takeaways, which we've kind of alluded to, onboarding is, or getting onboarding wrong is low-hanging fruit for revenue and profitability and for better customer service. So it's something that needs to be taken very seriously, and you need to ensure that you have the right tools and visibility on it. Infrastructure matters just as much as the human experience. You want to make sure that you have the right technology stack and that you're utilizing it to its fullest. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're already using a company like Flinks to connect bank data, you should consider pre-populating data instead of having a customer manually input various data points. Flexibility wins. Again, don't just be rigid and have one way for customers to connect. If you know that some of your customers, maybe 20%, don't like connecting their bank account because they're still not there yet, have a PDF upload, have a re-engagement function available, and then know your numbers. If you don't already have the data, you should consider getting it from your partners as well, or asking them to see what data is available for them so that they can help you understand your onboarding flow. So I want to take some time and open up the floor to questions that you folks may have. So we have a couple
Yeah.
questions so far that I'm seeing here just on Slack. So is the flow similar for B2B or for enterprise onboarding? And the simple answer is yes. We do KYB and connectivity to bank accounts for businesses, small businesses, commercial sized businesses as well. So where you can pre-populate the information, name, address, KYB information like that. But also we have enrichment data points that are specific to businesses, like income, expenses, similar as you would expect from a commercial process. So the answer is they're similar there. This one I think is for you, Klaus. Are there any sandboxes available to startup and fintechs who like to co-create solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have an available an open sandbox. There's actually, you don't even you can basically just grab those credentials from our documentation directly. One thing, speaking of fintech specifically, I think the timing is probably right there. One of the hot topics of the moment, obviously, is AI and vibe coding. So, in order to support the those initiatives through vibe coding, we've also developed an MCP server. Um, so, for those who are not familiar with what I'm talking about, the combination of an AI with an MCP server from Flinks, basically, you have your own developer that has all the Flinks knowledge to build whatever you want. So, basically, the combination of these two um, can allow you to build an integration. I've seen people building integration in one day, for example. So yeah, anyways, to answer your question, yes, there are sandboxes available, and you can basically spin up a demo in one day by using AI these days.
Thank you, Klaus. I'll just keep reading them here, Klaus. How
Okay.
has the expense identification advanced? Many transactions do not use the correct transaction code, and categorizing can be ineffective sometimes. So what I want to talk about here is, because I know this from a client perspective, how do clients give us feedback when transactions aren't categorized correctly? I think they're raising a tickets, and can you talk a little bit about that feedback and improvement of the model whenever we do receive categorization tickets like that?
Yeah, I think there are two things. There is the proactive enhancement, right? Like where we're always, reviewing our own categories and fine-tuning our machine learning. But to your point, we're also open to feedback, obviously. But the way on how this was designed by our product team, which I find pretty cool, is you don't even need to engage with anyone. You can just in our client dashboard just flag, hey, this transaction is actually is instead of X is Y. That is taken into account to enhance our models automatically. So this is essentially how we maintain it over time. I'm probably under explaining it. Probably someone from product would explain it better than what I just did, but that's at a high level
Yeah.
um, view of what it is.
So you can go and tag on our customer dashboard transactions that weren't categorized right. That's a direct feedback to the
Yeah.
team. But also for the individuals asking those types of questions, please do reach out and we can set up one-on-one meetings afterwards to troubleshoot these kind of things. Um, Moving on here, with Canada moving towards open banking, how is Flinks positioning itself for long-term compliance and consumer consent management? So I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I believe the first open banking type connection that we took live was in 2021 with National Bank of Canada. Before that, and since then, we continue to be on industry and government-led bodies that are crafting the what consumer-driven banking will look like. So our answer to that is we're staying really close to what the government is expecting for consumer-driven banking to look like in the future, so that the advice that we give our financial institution partners today who are live with this product in market can be as close, if not the exact same, as what the government will mandate when that day comes. So staying close to government and regulators is our answer on how we're going to end up being ready for it when the time comes. And for the open banking, which banks are already to plug in, and what is the success rate for the main Canadian banks? So, kind of a two-part question there. In an open banking environment or an OAuth environment, the ability to connect an account is 100% because it's tokenized. The end user is interacting with their online banking platform as they normally would to go in and pay a bill. There's no exchange of information, so there's no potential drop-offs to changing UIs or anything like that. So the connectivity there is 100% as long as that individual intends on connecting and providing that OAuth connection. Um, for the main Canadian banks in the screen scraping environment, kind of as we showed there, the connection rate is 80% plus, and then the success rate, the data that we're able to pull is 99% and up. Klaus, anything to add there?
Mm, no, I think you've nailed it.
Yeah. The nuances, you know, with screen scraping kind of still being the norm are that UIs change, so it takes some time to catch up to those, which doesn't happen in an open banking environment.
Yeah, I'm going through the questions here, so I'm kind of like avoiding the repetition here, but one of the questions is how do we get access to the visibility report for diagnosing drop off? Is that part of the one-on-one onboarding review? That's a great question. Thanks, Sydney, for your question. This is fairly new. It's a new reporting that we're launching now. So this will be part of your one-on-one with your relationship manager. So the relationship managers at Flinks, they have the control over issuing that report on a client level. So that will essentially power the discussions of, where we advise you to basically change or tweak or enhance your current onboarding flow.
Klaus, this is one. I think you can do that already. Is there a possibility that in the future, add the ability to restrict the customer to a specific bank? We run into the problem where they add one bank to the application and verify a separate account through the service. This is an issue for my clients. That one comes up
Okay.
quite often. You can pre-select, I believe, the account.
Yeah. This is essentially an implementation um feature, let's say, like a functionality. So you do have control over which FIs you make available to your end user. So you definitely can. Could a customer add more than one bank? Yes, absolutely. However, there's a caveat to that. Um, add more than one bank. Okay, not one more than one bank account. It's one bank. Okay. So the caveat is um, sharing data such as financial data is a consent-based sharing. So it's a user-driven thing and it's consent-based. So the journey needs to start from scratch for every FI. So that's the only detail. So if a user, for example, has three bank accounts at different institutions, you would need to allow the user, and that's actually a good insight for the onboarding as well, that we didn't really cover on the webinar. Do you have any other bank accounts you want to share? Giving that option as well is interesting. So you would restart the flow, at least on the connectivity side. So yeah, definitely possible.
Klaus, maybe I kind of like this one. What's the biggest infrastructure or compliance challenge you see early stage fintech apps underestimate? So we've worked with a lot of early stage fintechs and they're talking about Flinks. What kind of things do they overlook that prevents them from getting the full use of an integration like that?
So I think that again, I think that not looking at the process. So I think that overlooking the steps that the user takes and having an ability to measure, and that's how I'm understanding the question. So correct me if I'm kind of going sideways here, but if you're able to measure exactly how your user is moving along the flow, that's just extremely helpful and insightful. An example. So clients that are using our Flinks Connect platform or our Flinks Connect widget, the one that allows the user to select an institution and connect to their bank account, the ones that are actually measuring those steps, they leverage a functionality that we call events. So every step of the way, the widget fires events to the page that is hosting it. So you can listen to all the actions that the user has taken, what FI they selected, where they stopped in the flow, if they went back and forth in the flow. So the the most sophisticated onboarding journeys are the ones that are not only tracking that, but also taking actions upon that. So I'll give you an example. So a client that is going back and forth in the journey, they're probably misunderstanding why are they doing that? And then I've seen implementations where help is offered at that point. So something shows up on the screen saying, "Hey, are you having issues finding your account, or is it unclear? Reach out to our support team." Something around those lines, and also the re-engagement piece. So the re-engagement is really important as well. So uh, if you just trust that that user will complete the flow, I mean, it's better to just have the option of reaching out in case they don't.
Could you go a level deeper on the current coverage and availability for Canada for lenders relying on income and account data? Which Canadian FIs are production ready with true API connections today? Where are the gaps, and how do you see coverage shifting over the next 6 to 12 months? So I'm assuming by true API connection today, you mean OAuth open banking style APIs. This is still a minority of financial institutions in Canada. The vast majority are still going through the screen scraping APIs, but that's not to say that they're not available. We see a million plus connections each month just in Canada alone. So powering, tons of lenders for their income data and verification. So the connectivity in Canada is very robust with Flinks already as is. Some of these APIs that are in place are a good start. Some of these data providers we see have different use cases that they're powering today through their open banking OAuth connections. It's not available to everybody per se. But over the next 6 to 12 months, we expect more of the financial institutions to begin coming online with the pre-consumer driven banking APIs so that once the mandate is in place, they can convert those over as well. But the coverage in Canada is already very strong, even through screen scraping.
Yeah, and that's a consequence from the relationships that were built throughout the years, right? And the credibility that comes along with the MDC name. So
Another one, are you able to share how you might be integrating consent management dashboards? This is having worked with financial institutions, integrating their outbound connections with Flinks. This one's a much deeper conversation there. I think that one is best suited for an open banking style webinar where we can have some solutions architect walk through exactly what that might look like. But what we've seen so far is your customer will have the ability to log on to their online banking and show every consent journey that they've been on, whether they authorized consent or whether they didn't authorize consent. And then over time, you could see the ones that have tokens that have expired or been revoked. So that individual will have access to their entire consent history there. And as well as how long the tokens will be active for, whether it's a year or whatever the time frame will be. Okay. So I think that's about all of the questions. Um, Hopefully we've done a good job at helping answer some of them. Please, guys, you have our contact information through the webinar. Keep reaching out with us and we'll get some answers to you and set up calls where needed. Klaus, anything else to add on your end?
again, I mean, we make ourselves available for any engagement at all if you'd like to exchange ideas. And again, if you're at five, just show you what you've built. I'm really curious to see because it's always good to see well-built onboarding flows. But nonetheless, jokes aside, we're always available for any kind of discussions on that side. So, and
Thank
thanks
you,
for joining.
Klaus, and thank you especially to the audience for taking time to be with us today. We hope you learned something new, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Have a great rest of your afternoon.